I don't know if I told you the backstory, but I was on LinkedIn and scrolling, and this guy Justin kept showing up like day 30 of posting, day 40. It just kept going and going, and I was like, I gotta talk to this guy. Like that's a unique thing to keep up. And Justin, how many days are you at right now? What's your number?
We're approaching 100. So
Okay.
Okay.
it's
All right.
I kind of flipped it on its head this past weekend. Instead of continuing to count up, I'm kind of counting down to the end of my transition. So I think
Okay.
it's like 44, 45 days left, but I'm going to do a special post on the 100th day to kind of celebrate all the connections and opportunities that I've made over the first 100 days, right? So
Yeah.
That's
yeah,
awesome.
it's been a fun journey so far.
This is Peter Brecht. I'm here with Wade Spear, and our guest today is Justin McBroom. Justin, how are you doing today?
Doing great, guys. How's everybody doing?
Oh, we're doing great. Just another day above ground, right? And Wade's out there shooting some clays today. So
Enjoying Oklahoma weather. It's beautiful right now. Best
yeah,
time of the
it is.
year.
It really is, though. Justin, where are you located?
I'm in Houston,
Okay.
so they say it's going to get cold here, but we'll see how cold that is.
What is cold? Is that like 75 in Houston?
Yeah, 60 with humidity makes my bones chill now. So
Justin, so before we get into any of the specifics, we'd just love to hear about you, what's new and exciting in your world, and give some backstory about Justin and who you are and what you do.
yeah. I'm a petroleum engineer, work with an upstream operator, and they were acquired last year. So I've been on this kind of extension transition process, and I had kind of 6 weeks left and decided I'm going to start to post and expand my network on LinkedIn. And I've since extended my transition. So, but yeah, I'm approaching 100 days of posting. My network was really around the company, 17 plus years. And
Right.
that doesn't matter so much anymore when you find yourself looking for a job. So I thought, oh, I better go out there and start to beat the ground a little bit. So LinkedIn was kind of the media of choice so far. I mean, it's working in such that you guys found me, right? So
Yeah, yeah.
continuing to do that. Other than that, getting geared up for the holidays and trying to find the next opportunity in oil and gas.
Awesome. Just real quick, kind of like to kind of press on that a bit. So, I work for a small independent company myself, right? And I know everybody by name, every single person in my company. There's 32 of us. I can get on a Zoom call and everyone's face is on the same screen. But when you're working with a larger organization, there's the whole concept of like networking. You got to network within your own company to find answers and work together and all this stuff. I've never been in that sort of environment necessarily. I've always had smaller teams, but like, what's it like working with maybe all those resources or the ability to reach out to somebody? I mean, has that been beneficial for you over the last 17 years, or are you looking for something now that maybe is different entirely?
Yeah, I didn't maybe appreciate it until it was gone, but after kind of 17 years, I had found myself I was never further than one person away from an answer solution. So if I didn't know directly who to go talk to, I knew who would know who to go talk to. So it was just a matter of finding that person to say, I know it's not you, but you know who it is. And so that really was beneficial for getting things done,
Mhm.
less bureaucracy. Even if you were supposed to fill out a ticket, you just followed up directly with the person that was going to fill the ticket and say, hey, yeah, I need this. But it also allowed people to find me as well. So the things that I was doing in the company, if they needed help, they would be directed to me, which is a great place to be in when you're trying to help support operations and solve problems. If they don't know you exist, then how do you help them, right? And when I think
Yeah.
about what's next, having that environment, mid to small size, I think is where I can make the most impact without getting
Yeah.
kind of bogged down in process and bureaucracy.
Gotcha. Yeah, absolutely. Wade, you work for a couple large companies too, right? I mean, over the years, I
Yeah.
mean, I don't think you're with such a large outfit now, but there's pros
No,
and cons to
yeah.
both, right?
100%. 100%. You got to find which one you fit in better at, or I mean, even the culture and everything between the different companies is just a huge part in kind of how you fit. So, one question I got for you, Justin, is, you said that the company you work for was acquired last year. You're kind of going through a transition process still. Like, how is that? I mean, that's kind of a drawn out process. I mean, a lot of people have gone through it. I've been through a bankruptcy with a company. I've been through a sales process that was much shorter than that. Would it kind of be an extended, like you've had time to think about it and kind of live through it? Do you have any like advice or kind of things that you've taken away from it that maybe you'd share with people? Because I know it's always difficult going through that situation. And I was always just looking for any kind of advice I could get.
Yeah, I've always viewed it as a kind of in between. There were really three options. It was kind of you're out right away, you get brought over to the new company, or you're in a transition, right? And it's given me an opportunity um, to kind of know that definitive end date, right? When this stuff happens, it's the anxiety that people go through of the unknown.
Hmm.
And so it's given me time to consider, in the last uh, year since this has happened, it's a little more clarity on what I look for next. I hadn't created a resume in like 19 years. I was in college the
Right.
last time I filled out a resume. Right? So it's given me an opportunity to re-prepare myself to go out on the job hunt. It's also given me an opportunity to network, look around, understand what I do and don't like. And for a lot of people, depending on what you're going to do, it's an opportunity to get ready for what's next, whether that's a pivot, continued education, upskilling, looking for that kind of next thing. So it's been fun, I guess, relative to being at home and having to worry, still drawing a paycheck and having benefits
Right.
while kind of we're waiting for what's next.
What's the market look like out there right now, specifically in Houston?
I think we're just in that Q4 time frame where things are kind of slowing down, right? You're probably going to wait for headcount to get added on next year's budget. And so I'm seeing different things pop up here and there, but oil prices aren't helping anybody right now. So I'm kind of expecting to wait till kind of Q1, Q2 of next year for things to figure out where they're going to go. It's not hot, but it's not cold, is what I would say.
Pivoting over and talking job and career into the oil and gas side of production. So we haven't talked to anyone on the production side yet, have we?
I mean, one or two, but not really focused on the engineering side,
Okay.
especially.
So Justin, I look at what production does as kind of maybe off the radar a little bit more. I don't know, for some reason, like it's like it's just as critical as anything else, but it feels like it's a little bit off the radar. Could you maybe walk us through like a day by day of like what production is, kind of give us the 101 of that life and what you're
Yeah.
doing?
Maybe I'm biased because I was in production, but I felt like we're the actual operations, right? Everybody else
Right.
was just getting ready for us to do our job, right? You drill the well, you complete it, and then you hand it over to production, and they have to deal with it for the next 30 years. So it's really about getting the hydrocarbon out of the ground and to market, right? So managing choke strategy on the flow back, installing artificial lift. So you kind of take ownership of it at the sand face, so to say. So you've got the downhole equipment, getting it up to surface, managing your facilities. Depending on the organization, you might be making the call outs to have oil hauled or water hauled, depending on, how small or big your operation is. So on the kind of engineering side is the performance and optimization of the wells, right? So do I need a workover to replace hole in tubing or put a different artificial lift on it? Do I have skin damage? Chemical programs. It's all about the reliability and making the most of whatever product you're producing, and
Mhm.
trying to manage the cost along with that. So yeah, it's really that final step from getting it out of the ground to market. I had a boss tell me one time that only geologists add value with new finds, and the rest of our jobs was to avoid devaluing it from that point. So
Mhm.
we try to do it in the safest, most environmental and cost effective way. So you can ruin margins by spending too much money. It's LOE or OPEX is a big focus in that area. Yeah, it's really about the well all the way to sales and making sure that you're getting the most out of the individual well and capital investment you've already made.
I'm sure Wade has some questions too, but whenever production takes over a well, drilling leaves a hole in the ground, are there certain things that maybe you come across that you're like, man, like this is so common. I wish this wasn't the case. Like, I mean, there's got to be a pattern somewhere, right? In terms of, inheriting something that
Uh,
might feel like a problem child, but then you got to turn it around anyways.
yeah. Drillers, they're the bane of our existence because they get rewarded for how fast they can drill. And
Careful now. Careful now. Wade's a
I,
driller,
I
all
know
right?
Wade's on that side, and he's going to appreciate this. We've got to work within the vertical to the kickoff point. The thing that we're not doing, at least that I'm not hearing about, is like pumping around the curve and stuff. But when you think about a well in 3D, it just doesn't move side to side, right? It's actually like a corkscrew because it's moving
Mhm.
in all directions. And
Okay.
so they usually measure that deviation in dogleg severity. How bad
Mhm.
are you changing from one survey point to the next? Straighter you could give the vertical, the better we're going to have success in various forms of artificial lift, right? So
Mm.
when you think about rod pumps, um, you're taking a string of rods and moving it from surface to maybe 10,000 feet. And where you have that deviation, your rods and tubing are going to lean against the side of the well and they're going to sit there and rub. And so you're going to have tubing wear, holes in tubing, friction. So that's one of those that the straighter the hole you can give us, the better. And the other one is casing size. So the bigger the casing size you can leave us, the more options you have. So, 7 inch is always preferred, but they might stick you with a 5 inch or 5.5, 32 pound. And your ID, what's actually inside the hole, starts to restrict what you can put in or lead to costly fishing jobs later down the road. So those are just some of the things that you live with, but then you try to inform and influence future decisions made as the think about the life of the well. And again, somebody is like, well, if we can reduce capital, that's a better thing, but you can quickly
Yeah.
spend it on workovers and eat up that capital savings along the way.
So casing's a big deal, the size of the casing. I guess kind of talking about like getting into that. So production would also be responsible for you obviously doing artificial lift. You're probably doing some water flooding, steam flooding towards the end of life. I mean, you're literally taking this and trying to get as much out of this well as you possibly can, right? And at what point, so I talk with a lot of operators and their teams are pretty small. Like so by the time you get to being a larger producer, I mean, you start to grow in size pretty substantially. But I mean, how many wells is a larger producer controlling?
I got to think of it by how much acreage do they have in each basin, and then what is their spacing methodology? So how many wells are you drilling per drill spacing unit, right? How many formations or target zones do you have in that lease? So I'm trying to think. We probably had between 3 and 4,000 wells, I think,
Okay.
U.S. onshore. And it's interesting because it used to be that everything was operated gloves on steel by field operators. And
Hmm.
as you grew in well count, you had to grow in head count. So
Hmm.
when we were doing planning, it's when you get to a certain well count, you have to start adding head count. The thing that has somewhat changed that and is continuing to evolve is what they call operator pump by exception. So with technology, you can put in devices out and help monitor the things you're worried about on location, whether it's video or bringing in measurements through SCADA. And instead of having to have a person physically go out to location every day, things are coming back through SCADA. And you can actually start to create the exceptions, and then you're just notified when you need to take action. So
Hmm.
that's actually helped kind of expand the amount of wells per person. So as you think about continuing to grow, you don't have to add as many people, but the data is then notifying you of when those people need to act and actually help driving their response. So we had something that would actually understand what task needed to be complete, who was in the area, what priority it was, and what skill set they had. so we could actually dispatch the right person to go take care of that job. And
Wow.
that's been able to again improve kind of the manpower required to do some of this.
Okay. And is that like a specific vendor or software program, or is that something you guys develop in house or like co-develop? Like, how does something like that come about?
Yeah, it was really taking a platform and then building off of it to our specific needs, because every operation, even with the same operating and company, is different. What are your wells, artificial lift? Do they go to single well batteries? Do they go to central facility? Do you have compression? There's a lot of variability in that. And then you've got things like emissions and regulations that you have to consider from each state or where you're operating, maybe on federal land. And so it was kind of customizable to the operation that it was being applied in. But
Okay.
at the end of the day, it's the same methodology, just tweaking to make it work for each operating area.
Okay. Something that comes to mind whenever I just remember this a couple years ago, I was talking to a producer. He had about 300 wells or so. And it's just him. He had two engineers. He had like, I don't know, 5 or 6 pumpers, like all over West Texas, East Texas. And one of hit by lightning and it just, exploded and it was just a disaster. Obviously, not prepared for that. Insurance is there. The whole thing you got to clean. It's just it's a nightmare, right? But when those things happen, I mean, and I'm not even talking just about like lightning strikes but I mean, there's obviously things that come up like immediately that need like, hey, this is a big priority. We need to get this handled right away. Do you guys have like companies that you work with to bring in for responsiveness and things like that? That's got to be part of just, operating a normal company, I'd imagine, especially when you're talking multiples of, that 300, you got, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 wells. It becomes, the potential for something happening increases, right? Just because of the numbers.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's stuff that happens. I won't say catastrophic or,
Yeah,
there's a spectrum of what I will
sure.
call events. And the thing is that we would all go through incident management. Depending on the severity of the event is how big you stand up your response team. And
Right.
so, but you have set command and you've got
Hmm.
incident management that starts to go into place and you start to
Okay.
consider all the things that are around that. So the safety of the people and the environment. And so do you need to get folks out there that are monitoring air quality,
Hmm.
protection of the community and those surrounding kind of the operating areas, stopping the event, right? So you definitely, from a control perspective, don't want to continue making things worse. So making sure
Hmm.
things are shut in, and then becomes the cleanup, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Obviously,
Yeah.
we do a lot of things depending on where you're operating to prevent the further escalation. So take a tank,
Right.
for example. They're typically put in berms or the pad is burned. So you have secondary containment. So you don't
Right.
want a leak or anything to happen where, that is going to spill off pad and continue to go and make other impacts. So I think it's
Hmm.
a progression that tends to happen. There's the little stuff that I'll say all the way to kind of the bigger incidents that require a bigger response, and cleanup can be months,
Hmm.
of restoration and getting everything back to where it should be. So yeah, it really is on a spectrum. There's little things where a flare will have an upset and spit a little fluid and got a small fire on the ground. And
Hmm.
if it can be managed, then it is. I think the thing that I appreciate about kind of the industry is we take these things very seriously, and it's the investigation post fact to try to then prevent the next event from happening, right? So
Right.
it's not good enough just to take care of it, but how do we start to prevent it? And that's one thing I really appreciate is
Yeah.
the effort and time and money involved to take care and prevent the future incidents from happening.
Totally. And if you look at, I'm sure you guys are getting so much information from SCADA and all that, but on top of that, there's probably more things that you're constantly adding or improving in. Like one thing I've heard about, and don't know how common this is, I'm sure it is, but like LiDAR, right? You want to kind of see, what's the emissions, and you can spot problems coming from a mile away if you just have the right sensors kind of built around your facilities too, right?
Yeah. No, I mean, that's
Yeah.
one that has gained a lot of attraction in probably the last 5 to 10 years is kind of this emissions. And prior to that, again, you might have to have somebody go on location and see that a tank hatch was left open. Where now we've got technology, we're flying drones on inspection paths. And as soon as the drone identifies something, there's a process flow to get somebody involved and react. There's some companies that will put out cameras on location. And so, again, that is post process to look for potential leaks or emissions. And then that will trigger a task for somebody to respond to. So there's other things like unlit flare. So for the viewers that may not understand, some of this oil that sits in the tank is kind of, it's like gasoline. If you pour gasoline in a cup, there's vapors that come off of it, right? It's volatile. So this oil sits in a tank and there's vapors coming off of it. So you typically will have a low pressure flare, and that's lit by a pilot. Well, there's times that the pilot goes out. So how do you know that the pilot's out and you're not, burning that methane? So we put in things like thermocouple readings and other stuff to monitor the temperature of the flare and to make sure that things are set up. So yeah, as our understanding of all this evolves, so does our approach to deal with it.
I wish they had put like a thermal sensor on my hot water tank. I live in an older house and the flare goes out. I mean, that'd be so helpful. I'd like to have that
Yeah,
in my
I'm
house.
sure we can get a thermal well installed, no
Yeah.
problem.
One of my favorite interviews that we've done so far was a company called Unmanned Operator, and they fly drones over pipelines and look for stuff, and it just kind of opened my eyes to the technology that's out there, and like the implementation's incredible. So you and I had talked briefly about secondary and tertiary recovery. One of my biggest questions is, why would you choose to use like a water flood over a steam flood? Is it really just based on the chemistry of what you're trying to draw out?
When you think about secondary or tertiary recovery, you're trying to get um, uh, another percentage of the kind of oil in place. Typically, water flood is what you'll see in, say, the Permian Basin. I mean, they've been water flooding that for, God, I don't know, 50, 100 years, right? Steam tends to be more for your heavy oil. There's the grading of oil is based on API, and the higher the number, what we would call the lighter the oil is, and the lower the number, the heavier it is. So you get down to kind of like a tar or almost asphalt, and so it's not very mobile. And so when you think about that, adding the heat helps reduce the viscosity and help it flow to your producing well. So
Okay.
that steam flood is typically for the heavy oil. You'll hear about in Canada doing SAD, where they're using steam to generate heat, or even in situ, where they're kind of creating a fire down hole to get that to kind of a melting point and change the viscosity to be able to flow. But yeah, all that comes with unique problems and its own set of issues as you reach that phase of a field. The other one worth mentioning is CO2 floods. So you've got water flood, steam flood, and then you've got CO2. And the thing about CO2 is it's helping add energy back into the reservoir. So as you produce, you're depleting the pressure that was naturally in the reservoir. So it's kind of like a balloon, and it kind of deflates. But the CO2 is actually miscible in oil. So what it'll do is actually go in and swell that oil molecule and help it reduce the tension and free up from the pore space, as well as give it some energy to drive back. So there's quite a few CO2 floods in West Texas. And then I actually just saw, I didn't read the article, but came across today that I believe it's Cord in North Dakota is going to start looking at CO2 flood there, I believe. So that's going to be interesting. Don't know how many people have pressed that at scale for what I would call the unconventionals yet. It's been more of the conventional play.
Okay. So it's interesting, CO2, you use CO2 floods, but then there's also carbon capture sequestration, which is a whole other topic, but that's really trying to store carbon underground, right? That CO2. So it's a completely different application of the
There's
similar concept.
Well, there's one company, and I'm not going to say any names, but
Yeah.
they use a lot of CO2 in their
Mhm.
operations, and to the
Okay.
point that they're constantly looking for CO2. So I believe they
Okay.
had plans to actually build some sequestration to actually help pull CO2 out of the atmosphere. And it's not out of the kindness of their heart.
Right.
There's a benefit for them. So they're not
Mhm.
just drilling down into a deep storage and locking it away for generations to come. They're actually trying to use it in their ongoing operations. So
That's fascinating. Huh.
yeah, there's
Okay.
a mix there of, again, it has to be a value for somebody to go after it. And they use a lot of CO2, and they actually drill wells to source CO2, which sounds counterintuitive, but yeah, I think where we can mesh those two together, we get a great synergy, right? So as that technology continues to come along, I think finding a place to use it, which again lowers the cost and helps our financial and energy freedom in the US. So
So there's two questions I have, and I'm more just thinking out loud here. But I mean, the implications of that is I wonder how that company is using the 45Q tax credits. Because if they're getting credits for the carbon sequestration, but then they're turning around and using the carbon for another purpose, I wonder if they can still take advantage of it. And the second thing is those carbon the CCS wells, I wonder if we're gonna, store all this carbon and then 10 years from now we're gonna be like, oh my gosh, like we need to go, we need to go pump some hydrocarbons from this thing because it's full of it. I don't know. Might be an
yeah,
interesting thing to see happen.
yeah, I think that space, our posture was a monitor. We weren't diving in head first in anything. It was kind of, let's see how this plays out. But the skill set in kind of the oil and gas space plays right in. So evaluating the geology of the zone you would like to store it in, right? Does it have a cap or a trap where it's not going to migrate out? What's a porosity, permeability? How much space is there? Make sure you don't reach high pressure frac gradient. All those types of things, dealing with the facilities of that is really where the folks in oil and gas can come to play in that industry. I think it's just going to be down to how do people monetize it at a level that they're willing to get in and make those capital investments in it.
I don't know if it's like the rest of the tech world, right? It's like people want to either be first or they want to be better than the first, right? And it's good to be, I think, a second, kind of the second person to play the game, right? I don't
Yeah,
know.
the interesting things, and I don't know if you've seen this, that's kind of happening around the space, is trying to draw lithium out of produced water. Have you seen any of the
Not have
news on
not
that?
seen this. No, not
Yeah.
at all.
So
Okay.
in the produced water that is just in the formation along with the hydrocarbon, there's elements, right? So there's certain areas that have a high concentration of lithium, and they have the technology to like strip that lithium out. And as you know, lithium's used for all of the electronics and batteries. And, from the US perspective, we don't have an abundance of that. And so they've been looking, and there's actually, I think a couple of companies are going after it. And I can't remember the formation, but it runs, I think, Arkansas down into some of the East Texas area. I don't know if it's a
Okay.
smackover or what it is, but it has high lithium. But we're at a point where you kind of have to define some things, as in who owns that lithium? Is it mining versus uh, a production operation? How do you lease that? And is it a waste product? So if we produce it as a waste and somebody else and takes it and strips a mineral out, the royalty owner need to get paid for that. And so there's a whole lot of things that need to get kind of set out in the way we're going to approach that. But yeah, that's something that I think we're going to see continue to emerge and be in the conversation. Um, in the space. So that's going to be interesting to watch and see how that unfolds.
I'm curious. I'm going to be excited to see some mineral bro memes on that exact topic here in the next couple weeks. Then,
Yeah.
what's a misconception about production that you would like to, dismiss or maybe take off the table entirely? Is there something that people think about that just should be there?
Yeah, I think the one that may come to mind is our impact to the environment. I think there's times that I think people think that it's like Jed Clampett and you go out and you shoot the ground and oil starts,
Yeah.
spewing up, and that the environment is secondary to our goals to produce. And that's just really not the case. I'm not going to say that there's not a bad apple in the group, but if you actually go out and look at a respectable operator's location, it should be very clean, well managed, well kept. Our goal is to keep product in the pipe. And the reason I say that is my daughter has asked me before, like, how do you make sure it stays where it's supposed to go? I think they think it just kind of flows out on the ground and we dig a ditch or something, and it fills up in a pool. So everybody takes the environment very, very seriously. The people that are working in the oil field are the people that live in these areas, right? So it's their backyard. You're not going to tell them that they need to take care of their property better than them. And that's a big thing for everyone. So the thing that I think that I've got to give appreciation to the people that work out there day in, day out is we're not working in, Southern California with beautiful weather. You're either working where it's really cold or really hot most of the time. And so it's not an easy job, and got a lot of respect for the guys that get out there and do it day in and day out, because you're out in the elements. And I've noticed, I've lived in Texas, Wyoming, North Dakota. The people that can handle the cold can't handle the heat, and vice versa. And so your body acclimates, but yeah, they all do an amazing job. Hard work, great people, care about the community and the environment, and we try to do the best job that we can. As a corporation goes, you could say anything you want about corporations and capitalism, but the people are
Hmm.
wonderful people.
Agreed. Yeah. And I love your point about, gosh, this is like that hit home for me is like the people that are working in the oil field, it's their home, right? I'm in Southern California. Oil and gas is not, people don't think of this, they think of, you know, Bakersfield and Taft and all that. Yes, but we've got so many natural resources here in California. And right now, I'm sure you've seen the headlines about Sable offshore and, all these things that are happening. So my wife surfs, I surf, my family surfs. We love going up to Santa Barbara. We love going to Carpinteria. You got Rincon there, all the way down Huntington Beach. And I'm telling you, like, we've got these natural seeps, and like, I'm such a huge proponent of like, let's get Sable back online because it's gonna just take these tar balls offshore, right? And like, I'm gonna be able to like get out of the water, and like, it's a silly thing, but like, I mean, if the surfing community is behind oil production for Sable, and there's like there really is a growing number of us that are looking at these nonprofit organizations that are trying to stop it and talk against it. But it's like, no, like, we the people that are in the ocean every day actually want to see change. It's like, it's kind of funny. I don't know, I see such a relationship there, and like, no, we're not working, we're out there playing, but it's the same thing, right? I mean, you work, you play, you live.
Yeah.
Energy is part of life, and we need that. So I just love that correlation. I think you just connected some dots for me that I hadn't put together before. So thank you.
Yeah.
Cool. I got one last question. And it's I think that 10 years from now we're gonna say, oh, in 10 years we're gonna run out of oil. Like, this conversation never ends. But my personal belief is, like, refracts are gonna become a big thing as we get more data. I think we're only extracting, I heard a conversation, we're only taking like 1% of the hydrocarbons out of the ground. What do you think we're going to be talking about in 10 years?
Well, that's a good one. I think it's going to continue to be driven through technology. And it's one of the things that I think maybe there's a couple of people that see what's next today, but the real changes in technology almost catch us by surprise. But everything becomes economics at a certain point. So the higher the price of oil, the more you can spend to go get it. And so there might be some things that are technically feasible, but economically don't make sense today. So
Hmm.
as that continues to spread and grow, you can look at applying more technology, going to get the uneconomic reserves. I think it's going to continue to be a technology and innovation conversation. I personally think that there's going to continue to be maybe a focus on the reglobalization for a lot of companies that have kind of just been focused on these US unconventionals. There's places that have done their conventional or are doing their conventional. But where do you start to go and look at their unconventional space? So, uh, geopolitical climate is going to play a role into who's willing to invest in what countries and continue to kind of fill the global demand. But
Hmm.
I think we're going to be with the prominence of AI and technology continuing to make people safer, protect the environment, and ultimately try to get more out of the ground. I think it's going to be around technology. I actually heard a economics professor one time say that we'll never run out of oil. And it's kind of this paradigm that the last barrel of oil would be so expensive no one would ever buy it. So you'll always have one barrel left, right? Until there's a major change in the way that we generate power, we're going to be on hydrocarbon. And you can call it a transition to whatever's next, but we don't have that whatever's next today. But yeah, we're going to continue to need oil and gas long into the future. So
Totally. Man, that's such a thoughtful way to put it. And uh, we're going to be talking to some folks in the next couple weeks that are on the grid side, right? So we're all producing, right? And then they're taking it and then they're distributing it to users. And it's interesting in kind of researching and getting ready for those conversations. It's like, yeah, oil and gas is always going to be there, but we're going to have nuclear, you're going to have hydropower, you're going to have wind, all these things. Nothing is ever fully going to take over as the one source. And honestly, that's a good thing, right? We want to have options. We don't want to put all our eggs in one basket. So, man, this has been such a great conversation. I've enjoyed every minute of it. I'm kind of bummed that Wade wasn't able to stay on, but he's out there shooting clays. So
yeah.
give us a handoff, Justin. Where can people find you? Where can we meet you? Where's the best place to go?
Yeah. Try to connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm active. You can catch my series continuing to run until I land my next role. So go back and reread some of the series. Some are funny videos, some are, certain takes on producing, and it's kind of a stream of consciousness every day. So Justin McBroom on LinkedIn, and look forward to meeting other great people.
Best of luck to you in your next step. And we'd love to have you on again once your next adventure begins.
Sounds great.
Thank you guys for joining Local Energy. We'll see you again next week.